reading you my favorite poems to help you relax. I think being read to is very calming and I always love it. So I picked out the most peaceful poems I've read in my creative writing class and in my free time. And I'm gonna read them to you from my laptop. The first poem is called My Life with a Gardener. The screen door firecrackers closed. I find her at the sundry drawer, prowling for twine. I'm nothing she sees. There's a tornado in her hair. Her face is streaked with dirt, like markings applied before the rituals of drums. I've watched her shadow break free and tend the next row of corn. I understand this eagerness as fully as I can speak for the ocean. I say water is behind everything. A blue dictator say waves are obsessed with their one word, but have no idea what that word is. Her hands enter soil like needles, making the promise of a dress from cloth. In December, she begins smelling lilacs. By February, she sees the holes. Peppers burn through snow. I see her. She's the last green thing I need. When finally she's pushed inside by the rude hands of dusk, I set down my life for her skin, taught all day how to smell like the sun and the 100 directions of her hair and eyes that look through me to flowers that only speak their mouths, to speak that only open their mouths, to speak with the moon. That was by Bob Hickok. Orchids are sprouting from the floorboards. This is the next poem. Orchids are sprouting from the floorboards. Orchids are gushing out from the faucets. The cat moos orchids from his mouth. His whiskers are also orchids. The grass is sprouting orchids. It is becoming mostly orchids. The trees are filled with orchids. The tire swing is twirling with orchids. The sunlight on the wet cement is a white orchid. The car's tires leave a trail of orchids. A bouquet of orchids lifts from its tailpipe. Teenagers are texting each other pictures of orchids on their phones, which are also orchids. Old men in orchid penny loafers furiously trade orchids. Mothers fill bottles with warm orchids to feed their infants, who are orchids themselves. Their cues are a kind of orchid. The clouds are all orchids. They are raining orchids. The walls are all orchids. The teapot is an orchid. The blank easel is an orchid. And this cold is an orchid. Oh, Lydia, we miss you terribly. That one is just so bittersweet to me. This next poem is called A Blessing. And I'm sorry if you can hear any background noise. Just off the highway to Rochester, Minnesota, twilight bounds softly forth on the grass, and the eyes of those two Indian ponies darken with kindness. They have come gladly out of the willows to welcome my friend and me. We step over the barbed wire into the pasture where they have been grazing all day alone. They ripple tensely. They can hardly contain their happiness that we have come. They bow shyly as wet swans. They love each other. There is no loneliness like theirs. At home once more, they begin munching the young tufts of spring in the darkness. I would like to hold the slender one in my arms, for she has walked over to me and nuzzled my left hand. She is black and white, her mane falls wild on her forehead, and the light breeze moves me to caress her long ear that is delicate as the skin over a girl's wrist. Suddenly I realize that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom. That was by Jackson Holbert. This next poem is called Still. I said I will find what is lowly and put the roots of my identity down there. Each day I'll wake up and find the lowly nearby, a handy focus and reminder, a ready measure of my significance, the voice by which I would be heard, the wills, the kinds of selfishness I could freely adopt as my own. But though I have looked everywhere, I can find nothing to give myself to. Everything is magnificent with existence, as in surfeit of glory. Nothing is diminished. Nothing has been diminished for me. I said, what is more lowly than the grass? Ah, underneath, a ground crust of dry burnt moss. I looked at it closely and said, this can be my habitat. But nestling in, I found, below the brown exterior, green mechanisms beyond the intellect, awaiting resurrection in rain. So I got up and ran, saying there is nothing lowly in the universe. I found a beggar. He had stumps for legs. Nobody was paying him any attention. Everybody went on by. I nestled in and found his life. There, love shook his body like a devastation. I said, though I have looked everywhere, I can find nothing lowly in the universe. This next poem is called Two-Headed Calf by Laura Gilpin. Tomorrow, when the farm boys find this freak of nature, they will wrap his body in newspaper and carry him to the museum. But tonight he is alive and in the north field with his mother. It is a perfect summer evening, the moon rising over the orchard, the wind in the grass, and as he stares into the sky, there are twice as many stars as usual. That was Two-Headed Calf, and I just think that one is so beautiful and bittersweet. This next one is called Forgive by David White. It was the way, standing still or looking out, talking or laughing with the rest, that you realized part of you had already dropped to its knees, to pray, to sing, to look, to fall in love with everything and everyone again, and that someone from far inside you had walked out into the sea light to raise its hands and forgive everyone in your short life you thought you hadn't, and that all along you had been singing your quiet way through the rosary of silence that held their names. This next poem is called Winter Poem. The quivering wings of the winter ant wait for lean winter to end. I love you in slow, dim-witted ways, hardly speaking one or two words only. What caused us to live hidden? A wound, the wind, a word, When we hid the wound, we fell back from a human to a shelled life. Now we feel the ant's hard chest, the carapace, the silent tongue. This must be the way of the ant, the winter ant, the way of those who are wounded and want to live, to breathe, to sense another and to wait. The next poem I want to share with you, friends, is called Insect Life of Florida. In those days, I thought their endless thrum was the great wheel that turns the days, the nights, in the throats of hibiscus and oleander. I'd see them clustered, yellow, blue, their shells enameled, hard as the sky before the rain. All that summer, my second, from city to city, my young father drove the black coupe. Through humid mornings, I'd wake to like fever parceled between luggage and sample goods. Afternoons, showers drummed the roof, my parents silent for hours. Even then I knew something of love was cruel and distant. Mother leaned over the seat to me, the orchid. Father pinned her in her hair, shriveled to a purple fist. A necklace of shells coiled her throat, moving a little as she murmured of alligators that float the rivers, able to swallow a child whole, of mosquitoes whose bite would make you sleep 1,000 years, and always the trace of the blacktop shimmering through swamps with names like incantations, Okefenokee, where father held my hand and pointed to an egret's flight unfolding, white about swamp reeds that sang with insects until I was lost, until I was part of the singing, their 1,000 wings gauze on my body, tattooing my skin. Father rocked me later by the water, the motel balcony, singing calypso with the Jamaican radio. The lyrics a net over the sea, its lesson of desire and repetition. Lizards flashed over his shoes, over the rail, where the citronella burned, merging out shadows. Father's face floating over mine in the black changing sound of a night. The enormous Florida night, metallic with cicadas, musical and dangerous as the human heart, by Linda Hull. I just love those poems because they have such strong, beautiful imagery, and I hope that you're feeling relaxed and that you are able to picture all of the things that those poems painted for you. Thank you so